All right, so I'm sure this video is not going to have a lot of people on my side, and I mean, damn it, that's just how some things go. But Marianne Williamson, she was on Piers Morgan's show once again, and they had an interesting conversation about trans sports, trans individuals playing sports, and she didn't do too well in this conversation. Now, I'm one of the people that would, if she excelled throughout the polls and it seemed like she really had a decent chance, I would vote for her, hands down, like 630. But after this here, she needs to stand back, sit back, go back to the drawing board and figure this out. And sometimes just being honest will go a long way. I know it may not be the most popularist ideal. Sometimes they just want you to feed in either extremely right or extremely left, but sometimes you just got to be honest. And I think when Dr. West was given this question, he did a really good job of not feeding in to the extreme left or right, but he was honest, and it was a pretty clear answer. You know what I'm saying? So let's go ahead, watch this video, and let's have that conversation.
Winfrey, and she has her way, she'll also be America's first female president, with many Democrats warning that Joe Biden is simply too old to run again. She wants to outflank him from the left, the more youthful left, you might think, and harness love to defeat Donald Trump. And I'm delighted to say you're here in London and in my studio. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to play you a clip. This is President Biden last week ending a speech about gun violence by completely randomly saying this.
It's the least consequential part of this whole meeting for you, I promise. All right, God save the Queen, man. Okay,
well, two things. The Queen died 10 months ago.
She's not our Queen.
Our monarch, yes, not your Queen, and our Queen died 10 months ago. This is the latest thing involving President Biden, where he just said stuff which makes no sense, actually is pretty inappropriate, to some people quite offensive. He seems to have forgotten our Queen died last year. And it goes to his mental capability. It's a big issue. I mean, it can't be ignored, I don't think. How do you feel about this?
I think it's for the individual voter to decide. It gets personal, and I don't want to be personal about this. I'm running against the president on issues. There are many people in his camp who would argue, yes, he makes gaffes like this, but when it comes to his decision-making on issues, he's just fine. Every individual has to decide on that, and I think it's kind of cheap for me to go there.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That was a beautiful answer. Hey, I'm not going to get into the mud. I'm not going to give you that soundbite that you want. Marianne Williamson said Joe Biden is a full old idiot. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't get caught in those petty questions and just be like, hey, I want to talk about policies. I want to talk about substance. I want to talk about things that actually matter. And Joe Biden being 80-something years old, I mean, hint, hint. But other than that, that's all I got to say. Beautiful. Move on to the next question.
Happens a lot.
It happens a lot. Obviously, I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I'd make a better president.
Right. I want to talk about a couple of issues with you, which are in the news, which you have quite strong views about. One, I want to play you a clip. This is the British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, who was heard on a leaked video talking about the big trans debate at the moment.
You may have noticed Ed Davey has been very busy. Like me, you were probably seeing that he was busy trying to convince everybody that women clearly had penises. And I was reflecting, you'll all know, I am a big fan of everybody studying maths to 18. But it turns out that we need to focus on biology to 18.
So this has become a big thing, right? Along with the question, what is a woman? There's now a big debate where British political leaders have been asked about whether a woman can have a penis, and they've given varying answers. The British Prime Minister says no. The Labour leader says 99% of women do not. And the Liberal Democrat leader, who he was referencing there, says clearly women can have penises. On the face of it, this might seem a strange debate to be having, but what are the answers? I mean, you're a presidential candidate.
Well, in the United States, I think we are obviously going through a cultural transformation. People are getting more comfortable with the notion of gender fluidity, non-binary sexuality. For me, it's an issue of freedom. People get to be whoever they want to be, do whatever they want to do if it doesn't hurt anyone else. To me, we have to follow a North Star in our society. That North Star is the idea that all people are created equal. If you talk to me about a trans American, the part that matters to me is the word American. And so...
But what is a woman to you?
Listen, it's whatever at this point in somebody's culture, in American culture, certainly kind of whatever anyone says that it is.
Okay, so right there, I want to know your understanding, your perspective of what a woman is. Like, I know a lot of the argument is that it's something that mankind has put in a box. We decided this. I get that. I understand there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of in between. I want to know, Marianne Williamson, your understanding of it. And once we kind of, because, you know, they're going to talk about this for a full like 5 more minutes. It just feels like she wants to be honest, but knows that that's not going to play well. And people can see through the bull. I would rather have someone be honest and we can disagree than someone try to like play me for a fool. And with all the politicianal talk, you're like, oh, well, you know, most Americans and, you know, all of like, no, you're an American. I want your individual opinion on the fact or on the matter. And she kind of struggles doing that.
But it can't be. It can't be though.
Yes, so, it absolutely can. If people
you
want
say
to
until it hurts people,
way.
But if anyone can put their hand up and say they're a woman, we had a situation we had recently where the leader of the of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon of the Scottish National Party, she had to resign after putting a biological male rapist into a women's prison. So there is obviously damage there from self-identity, isn't there?
Well, certainly, but I think the issue there was rapists, not the issue of the sexual.
What is the fact she felt that this male rapist who identified as a woman at his trial,
that would be hard,
right? Simply to get into a women's prison.
Yeah,
that's wrong, right?
Well, yes, but then that's once you're talking about something like rape, then obviously it becomes relevant. It's not relevant.
What about sport?
Well, on sports, I do think.
So now they're about to get into the sports now with the whole prison thing. I'm not saying we need to just build more prisons, because obviously our judicial system needs major reform. Our prison system is a joke. And I mean, if people can profit from prisons, then like, you know, nothing else, no other conversation matters. But when it comes to individuals who claim a different sex and, you know, don't put that man who identifies as a woman into a woman prison, and vice versa. Don't put that man who identifies as a woman create its own section, create another section for these individuals who claim to be this and or who are this who claim to be that. Now once again, we can break that down and try to figure that out, but I mean, sometimes the more simple solution is the best that we got so far. But you definitely don't want to put an individual who is a man who claims to be a woman, who has a past or a rep of raping individuals, into a woman's prison. I mean, that just already throws red flags. So once again, like, you know, hey, we can figure this out. I can look at the numbers. I can have professionals try to dig a little deeper, and we can figure this out. But, you know, during the meantime, I will not put these individuals who claim to be a woman into a woman prison. Not going to work.
I think we need to protect girls who were born as girls. If they are in a situation where somebody, obviously because of the size of their muscles and of their body, gives them an
But that's all biological males.
Well, yes, that's sort of my point.
So you would
But-
stop, well, hang on, just to clarify that, you would stop biological males competing against biological females.
Unless it can be proven, there are some situations where somebody, let's say they were born as a man, but they're a small man, right? And it can be proven through hormone testing, through muscle testing, and so forth, that there is no biological advantage. But you know, the other day I spoke at Cambridge University, and I noticed when I went into the area where the bathrooms were, that it said, use whatever bathroom you're more comfortable with. And I thought, oh my God, it could be that easy. So I think everybody needs to lighten up on this issue.
Well,
Because
it's fine, except it's hard to lighten up if you are, say, a female Olympic athlete and you're losing out on your place.
Well, that's
because a
why-
biological male who's 6'3" and built like an outhouse decides to take your slot
And I
by
think-
saying, hey, I'm a woman, which goes back to your initial thing that you should all be what you want to be. Well, sure, I want to be, you know, I want to be a movie star, but I'm not. There's a reality check.
if you're talking about...
So I hate when a lot of these people give these weird examples like, well, I want to be a movie star. Well, that's not an identity. Piers, Morgan, that's not an identity. We're talking about gender identity, not what you want to be. So once again, I would have looked at him like, that was the dumbest example. Like, can you try again, please? I wish she would have answered the question. Like, she did kind of answer it. She said, until we can prove that the individual doesn't have any sort of like advantage. I wish she would have said, yes, I'm against it until X, Y, and Z. Like, be clear with your answer. Don't just kind of, because then it kind of makes it seem like you're just kind of like unsure and you're just trying to be a politician and just give us a whole bunch of empty words that don't mean nothing, so.
About specific instances, such as sports, such as where somebody goes in prison, et cetera, then obviously these become issues that have to be deciding points. But there is another world out there, which it's not hurting anybody. It just has to do with somebody's desire to identify a certain way, the area where we need to culturally open our minds to the idea of fluidity in gender and so forth. And both can be true at the same time.
Well, I'm not sure it can, because I don't think you can have limitless self-identity without it infringing particularly on women's rights to equality and fairness. That's the problem with it. And that's why it sounds great to say, of course you can, but then you end up with that ridiculous...
Hold on, let me just throw this in. Okay, so I really don't know Piers Morgan's position when it comes to abortion, but it just hit me just now. Anyone who is this concerned about women's opportunities in sports and worried about women's rights in sports, but they want to restrict women's access to abortions or any kind of birth control, is probably the biggest idiot walking on two legs. Like, you are a literal science experiment. Like, you do not function like a normal human being would. If you're so invested in women's rights, but then in the same breath be like, but women shouldn't have the option to have an abortion or have any sort of rights with their own bodies. But when it comes to sports, no, we need to protect women's rights when it comes to sports because, I don't know, volleyball, women's baseball. When's the last time you watched any women's sports? And be honest. Hell, I don't even watch sports anymore, but when I did, I wasn't looking at women's sports. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, let's be honest, let's be real. If you support, if you're one of the individuals who feel that women should have all these rights when it comes to sports, but no rights when it comes to their bodies, you're an idiot.
Ridiculous woman, Rachel Dolezal, who decided to identify as black. Well, if you have limitless self-identity, why can't you?
You know, I think that somehow we have to find that balance in ourselves as well as our
But
society.
how, as a lawmaker who wants to be the first female president of the United States, what's the balance? Because you either allow it or you don't.
No, I disagree with you. As president, I think my responsibility is to the notion of all people created equal. I, as president, quite the opposite of what you just said. As president, hey, I want the whole notion of my presidency would be, please be who you want to be, do what you want to do, spread your wings and soar. If you get to the point where you're infringing on the rights of other people, you're going to have a hard time with me.
How would you feel if
Okay, so she did a pretty decent job answering that question. You, as president, you have to represent everybody. You know what I'm saying? You can't just say, I'm a Democratic president, I'm only going to look out for other Democratic voters. Unfortunately, I mean, in a perfect world, that's how the presidency should be. But I do understand her answer. She wants to make sure she's not creating bills that restrict Americans' rights, obviously. But at the same time, you need to have an understanding on this nuance, on the gender identity being a potential problem in sports, in job applications, in the prison system, for example. And it's probably, tons of these kind of examples where we already have a system in place, either you're a man or a woman, and if something is tampered with that, foundation that we already kind of have, then we need to be smart enough to evolve and to build upon that. And to do that correctly, you need to hire, you need to be in contact, you need to have the right conversations with the right people who understand this kind of information. And that's how you build upon your civilization, because we as people, we evolve. We can't be the same people we were 100 years ago, because my black ass probably be enslaved, but like, we have to learn and grow. But at the same time, we can't just take rights and opportunities from Americans who just have a different ideology than you do. Because if that was the case, what's stopping them from treating black folks a certain way because they feel black people aren't really humans and this and this? So it just creates a nasty scenario. So you have to be the one to say, we got to be smart. We got to create policy that doesn't infringe on other people's rights, but at the same time, protect the people who are already operating in a system that we have been for decades. So pretty simple.
If a man a male politician decided to suddenly identify as female and became the first woman president of the United States,
I'd be like, damn, but that wouldn't mean...
You wouldn't just be damned, you'd be like, what?
I don't think...
You'd be horrified.
But that doesn't mean I think it would be illegal or that it should
I didn't say it'd be illegal. That's the whole point.
No.
The whole point, Madam Would-Be President, is it's perfectly legal.
I think, well, that's my
It's
point.
just wrong.
I don't even think it's wrong. It's just I think we'd all down a few glasses of wine that night. We wouldn't be real happy about it. But
Usain Bolt wants to run as a woman in the Olympic 100 meters. You going to allow it?
No, I believe that this thing with sports, we must protect those who, when you see these girls who were born as girls and they have worked so hard,
Right.
Obviously, and I think most people see that.
Quickly about reparations.
Yes.
So we've had lots of debates on the show about this whole issue.
Oh,
I
Jesus.
have to admit, I come from a position.
Jesus.
I don't see why people today should be compensated for sins against their ancestors, some cases centuries ago. Explain to me why I'm wrong.
Because it's not just about you. It's about the responsibility that you have as a citizen to the fate of your country. And whether you are an individual or a nation, you're not going to have the future you want if you don't clean up the past.
So should but on that then, should I be claiming money back as someone in Britain from the Italians for what the Romans did, from the Normans for what they did, from the Vikings, for their forebears? Now, should I be claiming reparations from all of them? And if not, what's the difference?
Come on, Marianne.
I'll tell you what the difference is. There is no way that a modern Brit is being economically disadvantaged by something that the Vikings did. Well, I think it's been a long, long time.
I don't know. There might be people in the middle of Britain.
Okay, so she answered that perfectly. Mr. Piers Morgan, if he honestly felt that way about the Vikings and the whoever, the Mormons, whoever he was talking about, had an impact on Britons in such a way, he would know for sure. It wouldn't just be a hypothetical like, well, let's just say aliens kind of took advantage of Italians. Like, we know for a fact, you can almost pick up, I want to say, no Republican could say that slavery and Jim Crow and what, the 80 years, maybe like 100 years after slavery had an impact on Black communities. If you have any sense in your brain, you will understand any effect has a consequence to it. Anything that happens can affect generations to generate, especially if it's institutions. It can affect generations, and that's exactly what slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and segregation, that's what it did. That's not hard to understand. But of course, Piers Morgan wants to go into hypotheticals, and it's like, well, you're wrong. And when it comes to slavery in America, we actually have evidence, we have facts, we have numbers to support this. So it's not a hypothetical.
No.
Who are still suffering the appalling financial injury of what the Romans did to their families.
Let me answer your question. It is very obvious that there has been intergenerational hardship financially. The gap between blacks and whites that is so egregious in America today is a legacy not only of slavery, not only almost 250 years of slavery, but also of almost 100 years since then of institutionalized suppression of black people. This is 350
But at what point do we
years.
Stop feeling guilty about the past?
After we paid our debt.
Or paying for the past.
There's a difference
But
between...
Marianne, here's my point. It never stops. Once you uncork that bottle, you end up never stopping.
You need to let me talk.
Okay. He said, when do we stop feeling bad? I almost wish, I know I shouldn't say this. I know I have to be a better individual to not say stuff like that. But I honestly wish he came from a people that were mistreated in every way possible. And I wish he could just sit and think about that. Just get over it. If you read half the information I have when it comes to slavery and Jim Crow and all that, it's just mind-blowing on how they mistreated my people. It almost seems like it belongs in a movie on how crazy it was. And just to say, well, when are we just going to get over it? That is honestly a slap in the face to every individual that came before me that fought their way, snuck their way out of slavery, Jim Crow, in every senseless position that they had to be in. It's a literal slap in all of their faces to say, let's just get over it. If anything, we need to dig in deeper. We need to dig our heels and make sure that their fight wasn't just for nothing. And that's what I'm doing.
There's a difference between blame and responsibility. I don't feel I need to feel guilty. My parents came from Russia and Poland, my grandparents. So it's not about my grandparents. It's not about my feeling guilty. It is about my feeling responsible for the well-being of my nation. Germany paid over $89 billion to Jewish organizations after World War II.
That's true.
And I think that financial remuneration has had a lot to do with not only the financial, but even more importantly, the psychological and emotional emotional healing between Germany
Okay.
and the Jews of Europe. And this is a healing that we have not had. That war was over in 1945. Ours was over in 1865, and we still take this
make a
toxic
good point.
baton and we pass it generation
You
to
make a good point.
generation.
I need a one-word answer to this question. To
Okay.
wrap.
And let's not forget, who else did America pay reparations to? I mean, I could tell you the answer, but I mean, I know there's going to be a lot of ignorant people watching this video. I want you to do your due diligence. Look this information up and figure out who did America pay reparations to. And once you figure out who they pay reparations to and the reason behind it, it should be no way in hell America shouldn't pay reparations, especially when they had the opportunity to pay reparations a long time ago. So once again, it's not my fault that disingenuous, evil people didn't want to pay reparations years ago. You see what I'm saying? So come on now, let's just be a little honest here.
Things, okay? Should Donald Trump, if he gets convicted of a federal crime and actually goes to prison, the Constitution says he can still be president of the United States. Should he be allowed to be?
It's
Yes.
not about, the law is the law. Would it be disappointing? Would it be awful for the country? Yes, but if it's legal, it's legal.
Marianne Williamson, great to see you.
Thank you.
Best of luck with
Great
your
to see you
campaign.
too.
Great
Thank
to have
you.
you.
All right. Whew, that was rough. That was a rough one. So to wrap this up, to be honest will go a long way. And if people, you don't have to be an expert when it comes to gender identity and pronouns and this and this. If you can just be honest and not be hateful, that's a whole nother conversation there. But if you could be honest like myself, I believe a woman and a man are based off their DNA. That's just kind of how I was raised. That's just kind of how I was taught. That's my perspective. Now, if a man wants to be a woman wants to be a man, all power to you. Do your thug dizzle. I ain't mad at you. Go for it. Have fun. I don't want laws and policies to restrict my fellow Americans from living their life to the fullest. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we have the smartest people in the room to make sure that this nuance that we're going through as a country or a world to now restrict or take opportunities from everybody else. That's simple. Once again, I'm not the smartest guy. I can't figure everything out. I will be in contact with the people who are knowledgeable and are doing this in good faith to make sure that nobody is marginalized, nobody is demonized, and everybody is having an opportunity in America like it's supposed to. That's it. Real simple. I mean, I honestly kind of think that's simple, but I don't know. I will read the comments in this video and see if people could just be honest with themselves. But if that's not you, if you can't be honest, if you're just one of those idiots who think that, you know, the world needs to operate on how you see it and how you perceive the world, let me know in the comments. And like always, let's have that conversation.